Okay, so today we are going to be doing some forensic journalism, and we're going to be investigating the world of timing, and we're going to go a little bit deeper than we might normally. And this is based on a question I've sort of had loosely kicking around in the back of my mind for a few years, but was recently articulated by a buddy of mine, Frederick Olson, on the Modern Drummer podcast. And the question is basically, we know that we are never truly in perfect time. You know, whenever we're playing in time, we're not perfectly in time. It's not like every hit is spot on down to the millisecond, the microsecond, the picosecond, right? So obviously there is a certain range in which our brains will consider us to be in time. And his question is basically, where is that threshold in milliseconds, let's say? And my belief is that this is probably different for each person. I think a beginner drummer and an advanced drummer would probably have different conceptions of what they consider to be in time or what sounds like it's in time to them. And I've definitely had this experience when recording drum tracks for songs and editing my own tracks. I will usually listen through my track against a metronome, and when I'm trying to determine if I need to nudge anything or redo a take or comp a take, I'll just be listening and I'll wait until I hear something that sounds out of time enough or that sounds unacceptable to my ear, whatever that is, and then I'll look and see how close it is to the grid, and then I'll decide if I need to do any comping or redo the take or whatever. Some people will just go into their DAW and they'll look at every single hit next to the grid, and if they see something that looks like it's off, then they'll start moving everything and nudging everything. And I was kind of in that camp at one point in time, but I've learned to not rely on that so much and not rely on what I'm seeing, but try and rely on what I'm hearing and just listen to it. And if I hear something that sounds off to me, then I start investigating. But I've never really known specifically what that threshold is. I know when I hear a snare or a kick that sounds off to me, and then I'll go in and try and fix it or do whatever needs to be done. But I've never really known like how far off it needs to be. So what I want to do today is I'm just going to play along with a click. I'm going to play a variety of different grooves at a variety of different tempos. And then we're going to go into Pro Tools, and I'm just going to go through that process. I'm going to just start listening to the take. And then when I find some moments, shouldn't be too hard, that sound unacceptably out of time to me or something that I might have fixed if I was tracking for an album, then I'll look and I'll see how far off was I from metronomic center or wherever the click would have been. And then we can hopefully sort of average them out and get a determination roughly in milliseconds where at least my threshold is, and then maybe you can listen and see if it makes sense to your ear as well. So let me do a little tracking, and then we'll head over to Pro Tools and see what we hear. Okay, so here we are at the computer. You can see I've got a few different grooves recorded at a few different BPMs, and you can see I've marked up here all the places that when I was listening through just felt like something that if this was me tracking for an album or for a song that I would probably want to redo or fix or modify in some way. So we'll just go through a few of these and we'll see what we can determine. So this is me just playing the snare. I wanted to try in a groove and then also just playing time. So you can hear I'm just playing quarter notes and little moments like that feel too off to me. And what I can do is just highlight here where the grid line should be and go to the front of my transient, and then I can see up here that length is 28 milliseconds. Okay, so I can do the same thing. I can look at a few others and say, okay, that's like 36 milliseconds. Another one, this one's late, you can see by 15 milliseconds. And this is the peril when you are the one editing and the one that played and recorded, because can be a hit to the old ego. But anyways, you're here with me. So I wanted to do the same thing with the kick, just to see if the low or higher frequencies made any difference. And same sort of thing, 31 milliseconds, 20 milliseconds here. Okay, so I'm just playing a basic groove in this one. this all feels fine to me until that feels a little late. So you go in and see that that is 17 milliseconds. Okay, these ones. Again, a little late. 24. And you can already see this one's going to be early. And indeed. Then when we check that one out, 34 milliseconds. Okay, I'll just flip around a little bit here. I don't need you to hear every single one. A little more complicated groove. You can hear right there, there's a little flub, a little timing issue. Starts a little late. That is 36 milliseconds. Let's take another groove example. Slower, so slower tempo. Yeah, so that little section just felt a little off to me, and this is probably the best spot to look at, 36 milliseconds. And then I also did, was it this? Yeah, kind of a more complicated groove. And it was harder to detect the issues, probably because it was denser. Okay, and then finally I did a faster groove to see if that made a difference. Right there, you can hear it feels a little late. Interesting, you can see this seems a little late, 23 milliseconds, but this looks quite early. Yeah, that's very early. But I don't know, it didn't feel like as much of an issue for whatever reason. So when the notes are kind of packed together, I found at the higher tempos, it doesn't make as big of a difference to my ear. So anyways, what I'm learning here, what information this is giving me is that my threshold or my tolerance seems to be somewhere around 30 milliseconds, being either ahead or behind. And obviously I'd like that to be as low as possible, but it seems like right around where it starts to get to 30 and above, that's where I really start to take issue with it. So for me, I'd probably want to set a goal of maybe under 20 milliseconds of being able to do full takes of songs or whatever it might be, and have all of my hits be under 20 milliseconds from wherever they ought to be on the grid line. So I wonder if I don't know if there's an app or something that makes it easier for me to practice that and tell without having to record myself every single time and dig into Pro Tools. But yeah, it's a good piece of information to have, and it just sort of solves that, or I should say satisfies the curiosity, kind of scratches that itch and satisfies the curiosity on really how far off can you be and still feel like it's right. I've heard Shannon Forrest, I think, says that he tries to be under 10 milliseconds, which that is great for him, and maybe someday I'll get there as well. But I'd be interested to hear what you guys think of this. Obviously, we could do this in many other scenarios too, and when you have other instruments like guitars and you have a full mix going, a full arrangement, you might hear things differently. I don't know if it would be more or less forgiving on your ears, but I can imagine there would be instances where maybe I'm only 10 milliseconds off in one direction, but the bass is 15 milliseconds off in the other direction, and together that creates an issue. So, or the opposite situation where maybe I'm 10 milliseconds off, but the bass is also 10 milliseconds off in the same direction. Now it sounds like we're right. So anyways, fun things to talk about, to think about. Let me know if you enjoyed this video. You are more than welcome to subscribe to this channel. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.